guest today. Our speaker is Cristina Del Río Fresen, and Cristina is leader of the Global Tourism Safety Lab at the Ministry of Tourism for the Canary Islands. So Cristina, thank you very much for joining us today. Niamh, would you want to move on to the next slide and we'll get things up and running. So Cristina, if you can take over now and brief the attendees on this webinar in terms of where the Canary Islands is today, and we have some notes on screen, maybe you can talk through and extrapolate.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for organizing this nice meeting. Good morning to everybody, and I hope we enjoy these 45 minutes explaining you the situation in the Canary Islands. And thank you very much to Niamh and to Michael as well, that have been very helpful in the development of this information session. Well, today here in the Canary Islands, we wake up with very good figures. As you can see here, the crisis has been very well managed, even though we were the first place in Spain where we realized we have a case in La Gomera. We acted very quickly and we have had very low numbers. The figure today, nowadays, is 109 persons contagious per 100,000 persons. Comparing this figure, 109, with other of the main markets of the Canary Islands, you can see the United Kingdom has already 481, Ireland 116, Sweden 378, and Germany 219. It's difficult to compare this, but it's a matter of showing you how we have been controlling the pandemic in the Canary Islands in a very great way. Currently, our borders are closed. It's a national measure, but we will reopen it completely from the 1st July on. Nowadays, in the archipelago, we have had 2,300 cases. Unluckily, it's a pity we have 161 deaths and 2,060 people recovered. It means we still have 200 cases in active situation. But for the second day, during the last 2 days, we have had no new deaths. I think we are overpassing this situation, as yesterday we only had 4 new cases in all the archipelago, but some islands have never had any case at all.
And Cristina, can I just jump in and check there, just to confirm the 2,300 figure, that's in total during the whole crisis, so from January right through to today? From
February, from the 1st of February until now, 2,300 people. And you have to realize that we only have a population of 2,200,000 people living in the Canary Islands.
Thank you. And then in terms of arrivals, quarantine is a big issue in the UK and Ireland at the moment. Where are you on quarantine?
Well, the Spanish government declared a quarantine for 14 days for people coming from abroad to the whole Spain, including Canary Islands and Balearic Islands. But it will be lifted from the 22nd of June for some flights, experiencing some flights, and then fully abroad to all the foreign countries from the 1st of July on. So nobody will have to have a quarantine in Spain from the 1st of July on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nowadays, most of the hotels are closed. 95% of them are having closed during all this period. Only those that were providing service for physicians, doctors, and people involved in the sanitary sector, because some of them, they were unable to come back home to avoid contagion their families. So they reopened some hotels for these people and for politicians who need to move from one island to another, but it was a very low capacity. Now these hotels, they're increasing the numbers. We will have gradually an increase of the hotels reopening from the end of June in advance during July and August. We expect to have the total hotel capacity of the island reopened for October. And from next week on, we will be able to work in regional tourism bases. We mean moving between islands from one island to another, and we can start our holidays in the Canary Islands in the same island, or going to Fuerteventura or Lanzarote or anywhere else inside the region.
So that's Monday of next week, which is what, the 8th, is it?
Yes, correct.
The 8th.
That's correct, yes. From the 8th on, we're able to move between the islands.
And then we note that obviously flights, Ryanair and others have announced flights starting from the end of this month, and then a lot of capacity, Ryanair, Buzz Air and others from July onwards. So Niamh, can you move to the next slide, please?
Mm.
So Cristina, can you talk us through the plan that you have as the Canary Islands from a health and safety perspective?
Yeah, I think it's very important, and this is the key point that we have a plan. We started planning it 2 months ago, and our priority for the islands is to be a safe haven for tourists and residents. Both parts is very important, and we need to keep a balance. We have had a very low impact, and we want to keep the islands like Canarias Fortaleza. It means Fortress Canary Islands. We like to open the borders because we live on tourism. It means nearly 50% of the employment in the islands, but at the same time, we will have to be very careful because there is the risk of new infections if we open the borders without any control. So that's the reason why we call it Canary Island Fortress. Fortress for the residents and fortress also for the tourists that would like to come here and to feel safe and enjoy the holidays without the pressure of feeling that they're near in a hospital, living in a hospital. We want to be a traditional destination, but with much more health and security actions inside the destination. We're introducing an important concept for the tourism sector, which is the reciprocity of risk. It means control on arrivals and departure. How we do it? We test the technology and the science are developing better tests, cheapest, and they're much more effective week by week. There are tests already with 4 hours with a very high level of accuracy. And we think we're able to do even in the airport 1,200 tests per hour, just in case we were needed to do it so to bring the people back to their country with a certificate that they have not been contagious here in the Canary Islands. So what we're proposing in general is control at origin before boarding and traceability during all the value chain, starting in the source market, continuing in the destination, and when you come back again to your country.
And Cristina, can you explain in terms of if somebody arrives at the airport and a heat sensing camera identifies that passenger arriving has a high temperature and they are tested, how long does the test take and what happens to the results? Do they have to wait at the airport? Do they receive the results on their phone? How does this work?
Good question. In those cases, because there will be a kind of temperature control at the airports, as you have said, if they realize that somebody is not feeling well or he feels sick or he needs some help, that person will be treated separate for the rest of the passengers that will be able to go like in a fast track if they already come here with a test already done from their region. Those people that are feeling sick or are not feeling well, they will be separate to be tested. There are tests that will give a result in less than 1 hour. And in that moment, we will realize the situation of that passenger and what to, if we have to improve the protocols of immediate reaction. This protocol take this person away and they will be separated in a separated space, not in a hotel. It's a specific place like bungalows or apartments that will be prepared in each island so people can be separate but be keeping with sanitary persons and taking control of them if they are feeling well, if they can continue their holidays in a normal way, or if they need to rest there for a few days.
And Cristina, can you explain a little bit what you mean by control at origin? My understanding is that you are going to encourage all visitors to be tested 72 hours before or 48 hours before they fly, so that hopefully prevents people traveling who are unwell, but also you're going to allow for, it's not going to be obligatory, but you're highly, encouraging or recommending that people will do that.
Exactly. We're encouraging this because we have been in a discussion where with the World Tourism Organization, the United Nations World Tourism Organization, and the World Health Organization as well. I think it's very important that we realize that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We are living exceptional situations, so we need exceptional measures. I think it's better to control the situations in a region instead of creating crowds or queues or lines at the airport when they arrive to the destination. I think it's better to prevent in advance. So what we're suggesting in our strategic plan is to do this control in a region. So the client can go to their laboratory or to their hospital or nearest service before departure, the day before, 2 days before, and with that certificate, he will be able to come here to the Canary Islands like in a fast track with much more facilities. And we're even thinking in helping these people and being grateful for their effort to do this by compensating them with a bonus, like an extra present for them when they arrive to the Canary Islands, with some money that they will be able to spend in the destination, in our bar, restaurants, cafeterias, and so on. And they're able to spend this money here in a way to compensate it for this effort. I think it will be only during the summer that we'll be needing this measure. But as we start the activity, we need to be very cautious because we're very afraid of a second wave.
Okay, I mean, we'll move on quickly, but one last point on this slide is you have a quote there, which is, "A chain is as strong as its weakest link." And my understanding of what you mean by that is that a lot of airlines are very busy looking at their protocols, airports separately are looking at protocols, tour operators separately are looking at protocols and destinations, whereas my understanding is the Canary Islands are a little unique in that what they are trying to do is link everything together and not for there to be a weakest link, and to work with all partners. So you are encouraging tour operators and travelers to be tested before they travel. You're working with the airlines by testing a safe flight, which we'll get onto in a minute, and you're working with people on the ground.
Exactly, you're completely right. This is our lemma to work in this way. A chain is as strong as its weakest link. We think everybody needs to cooperate, the tourists, the tour operators, the airlines, and of course, all the resources in the destination must proceed with the same protocols to control and to provide the proper security in all the traceability of the process.
Okay, let's move on to the experience, which is also interesting. You start by saying the Canary Islands will not be a hospital. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think it's very important that we are working with emotion and experience. People would like to come here to relax. So we need to fulfill these expectations from the people. They come here to relax. I think it has been a very stressing year. 2020 has been difficult for everybody. So we won't we won't like it to become a hospital or a chirurgical experience. It's a holiday experience, and we're trying to protect it. So we have had to be very innovative and creative with the protocols, providing a lot of security, but somehow it's invisible or not perceived directly by the client because it can be used in applications in technology, new products, virucides, and other, the use of different matters that help to improve the security without being realized or noticed in a bad way by the tourist.
So there will be protocols there, but they won't be overbearing. People will still have a holiday experience.
Exactly,
Can you
that's very important.
talk about the climate? We've all seen that pre-COVID, we were all concerned about the climate, and that was a priority for everybody. And that seems to have disappeared. Obviously, COVID overtook us all, but the climate has also benefited with lower emissions during the lockdown. And you say you want to, not lose momentum and not create a new problem in trying to fix COVID.
You are right. I think we cannot forget about it. It was the big issue until March, and then suddenly everybody has forgotten about it. We need to be working together to avoid the climate problem around the planet. And in the second point, you will see it as well. Yesterday, I realized that they're facing a terrible problem in Thailand with 2 million disposable masks every day, and they need to treat it. So we are suggesting to look for any other kind of solutions that don't create much more rubbish or garbage around the islands, reduce the use of plastic, trying to use reusable things, and improve the treatment with better chemics and chemicals to be sure that things are cleaned and we don't have to throw them after every use.
And you also plan to, I suppose, reduce or limit the global supply chain and try and make it more local, and also share everything that you learn on an international level.
Yeah, I think it's important that all the destinations, not only the European ones, we're cooperating already with Costa Rica, with Galapagos, with Dominican Republic. We're sharing the knowledge. They're telling us what they're doing. We're telling them what we're doing here, because we think it has to be it's a general business, a global business, and we have to do it as better as we can, and knowledge can be shared.
Thank you. Niamh, if you can jump on to the next slide, please. So now we're going to jump into, that's the formal part of the presentation. As promised, we didn't spend too long on it. So now questions, Niamh, if you can jump on to the first question. So these are questions that have been submitted by you, the media, on this call today. And as I say, we've grouped them into themes. So the first obvious theme is traveling to the islands themselves. So there's 3 questions here that relate to travel. When are the Canary Islands expecting to lift the travel restrictions? When will the islands be open again to UK and Irish tourists? And will there be quarantine restrictions for visitors upon arriving on the islands? Cristina.
Well, yeah, I think we have been talking about this a little bit before, but just to focus on the answer, when we are going to expect to lift the travel restrictions, we are going to reopen for the regional market, for the islands market, from Monday, June 8th, and we will be able to move between the islands, and internationally from July the 1st. There will be no quarantine at all, and the islands will be open to all the countries. We have no separation by nationality. Okay, the only thing we're requiring is that people come tested from their origin. That's the only requisite. We're just controlling if the person is ill or not, but nothing to do with their nationality.
And to be clear, you're recommending and advising that people are tested before they travel, but it isn't a obligatory requirement that if somebody arrives at the airport and for whatever reason didn't get a test, they can be tested upon arrival as well.
Correct. We'll be able to do it here as well, just in case you don't have that fast track or easygoing situation. We will provide some incentives for the people that are coming tested here, as I told you, with that bonus. But if somebody come here without being tested, they will have to wait a little bit in the airport. It's not the best situation, but it will be an option for them as well.
Thank you. And then lastly, if people do arrive on the island, and they're unwell, you have protocols set up specifically for tourists in terms of how to help them and assist them.
Yeah, and it's a very important thing. We have a very good experience already, how we handled the crisis in La Gomera, how we handled the crisis in Tenerife. We learned a lot about it. No people were spreading the pandemic coming out from the Canary Islands, because we try to control it as much as we can. And so we have had very good figures, but now we have even a better plan. We have a mix using the public health service plus the private health service together to act in a fastest way, and looking for designated accommodation outside the hotel. So there will be no need to close a full hotel. There will be special places like bungalows or apartments where they can be controlled and will be treated in a very professional way by our sanitary person, and they will be able to go to the public or the private sector attention as well in their hospitals.
Thank you.
And they will be provided to everyone.
Will there be a cost to the visitor for that test if they arrive at the airport? And what type of test will they receive?
During the summer, there will be no test. There will be no cost for the passenger coming here, because it's like an opening situation. We're testing and improving the way we need to develop the protocols and how to act and how to react and how to detect any possible person that is feeling unwell. But it will have no cost during the summer. Then we will have to check if somebody is coming here without testing in origin previously. But of course, I think that in that case, maybe that kind of measure will be taken, but it will be from October onwards.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. We have it here, sorry. Upon arrival. So apologies, I know there's a lot of questions coming in. I'll try and get to those that are relevant to on screen, but we won't necessarily get to all of them, but we will get to most of them by the end when we get to the Q&A section. So please do keep the questions coming in, everybody. So upon arrival, what changes can visitors to the Canary Islands expect to see? People who've been before. And similar question, what health and safety measures and plans do you have in place in your airports and resorts specific to tourists?
Okay, the changes will be really small. There are some changes at the airport, as for example, the temperature control. And in the transport, there will be reduced capacity in all the buses, so people will be more separated. Social distancing will be probably the main measure we're going to improve, but it doesn't create a bad feeling or a bad sensation for the client. It's only a matter of prudency, the same one they are using at their origin countries as well. It means that, for example, in buses, it will take maybe 50% of the capacity, but we're even looking for new solutions, technological solutions like new filters that will be able to improve this capacity in the near future, but not immediately, not for this summer. And in hotels and in general, you will realize the increase of the technology. This is the most important change that will be perceived, because in order to adapt to the new situation, it is essential that our visitors have all the information that they at the fingertips without the need of physical contact or papers or documents. It will be, for example, an important change. It could take maybe 5-6 years to do it, but we have been forced to do it in less than 2 months. Most of the documents or papers will disappear in the near future.
Okay, thank you. How stringent and how strict will these protocols be implemented?
Well, it's
what will be mandatory and what will be advisory?
Well, we have, as you say, two distinctions. There are things that are going to be mandatory. For example, we have to change part of our laws, referring, for example, if you provide first help or first attendance when you go to the beach, the protocol on how they give you breath, it will have to take, and it will be changed, and it will be mandatory, and it will be under a law. There are other actions, for example, referring the use of a health, and it will be mandatory to have health dispensers every X meters, and cleaning protocols as well will be mandatory. But there are some others that will be recommendations. For example, we cannot forbid that everybody print a brochure. It will be allowed, but we do not recommend it. We prefer people start using apps, providing service through internet or websites, instead of using or distributing brochures in the beach. And another example, for example, it could be that the menu in the restaurants, it will not be printed anymore. Maybe when you arrive to the restaurant, you will be able to check a queue signal, and then you will see the menu of that bar or that restaurant in your phone.
Thank you. And interesting question in relation to the Balearic Islands. They have proposed testing of foreign visitors upon arrival, putting them in quarantine for 6 hours while they await their results. Is that something you're considering?
Not really, not because with the amount of clients we are receiving, the passengers and tourists in the Canary Islands, 6 hours at the airport is too much, and it will be very crowded. It's a matter of logistic. I think that maybe this proposal in the Balearic Islands is temporary, just for the first flights, the validation flights they would like to have as the ones we are going to have during this summer. So this is a matter of time only.
Okay, next question, next slide is air bridges, which is something very topical in the UK and Ireland at the moment. So are there any plans for the Canary Islands to build an air bridge or a bilateral travel agreement exempting travellers from quarantine? And how much of a factor will nationality play in who's able to travel to the islands?
Well, I think I mentioned it before, the nationality should not play any role in this matter. The only thing that is important is if the person who wants to travel or the tourist is healthy or not. That's the only key point. And the only way to check it is through the test. So I think is the key point. The nationality creates a bad sensation of fear or of security. I think the only way you have to prove it is via test. And the plans for the Canaries to build an air bridge, I think we're negotiating and discussing already with the companies, different companies for different countries, bilateral relations with them, trying to start flights from July on, and without any quarantine. We don't know what's going to be the decision of the United Kingdom referring to quarantine, but we cannot interfere in other countries' decisions for themselves. I think there will be a solution, and I think if they like the way we are proposing to test people prior to come and before departure from the destination coming back to their country, I think it will be enough and will help them to avoid that quarantine.
Okay, so you're hopeful that the current quarantine that the UK and Ireland has at the moment for returning travellers and visitors won't be an issue, hopefully in time, that they will see all the efforts that you as the Canary Islands are going to and hopefully that won't be an issue. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Second wave. It's a good question. What will happen if there is a second wave?
Well, most of the plan is thinking in that second wave. Why? Because with the experience with the first one has been dramatic, not only by the amount of people who has been damaged or has lost their life, but because all the people have been at home during 2 months and a half, and we don't want it to happen again. So the protocols, what we design it is like in a street light with 3 levels. Green level will be in no cases around the Canary Islands and no cases abroad, because we're controlling and testing before, so we can have a normal life. It will never be again like in February 2020. It will be different. Life and world has changed already. Now in this moment, when we reopen, it will be in yellow level, yellow or orange level. We need to be careful. We need to improve these extra measures in the destinations and be prepared just in case we detect any case to have an immediate intervention. The protocols for every service are divided in three levels. And of course, if you get to red level, which means that we have new cases or that second wave, we have an immediate protocol to inform the airlines, the tour operators, how we'll react in that moment. The groupal activities will be closed, and the hotels know exactly what they will have to do in that moment, informing the local authorities to activate the protocol of immediate attention.
Very good. Good to see that's been well considered and well planned. Neve, we can move to the next slide, please. So on the islands, what is the plan for traveling between islands? Will boat excursions be possible? And then if you can also touch on hotels, will hotels have to limit booking capacity?
Well, traveling between the islands will start very, very soon. And we have already talked with the ferries companies, because people here used to move with the airlines or with the ferries, with the cars. What they have been doing in the ferries, for example, is separating all the seats to improve the distance measured between them. And they've been adapting it with health dispensers and some other measures inside the ferries. Something similar with the planes, but changing the filters they're using inside to avoid 99.99% of the bacteria and virus, and changing completely the air inside the cabin every 4 to 5 minutes. With the small boat excursions, they will be operating. Yes, they will be operating again with some restrictions. They will have to reduce the capacity, and they will have to use a specific products to clean the boat before and after any activity to be developed inside the boat excursions.
And then hotels capacity. Will hotels be allowed to go back to their previous capacity, or will they even be able to? Or what are they planning, and how are you working with the hotels?
In these cases have been very difficult, because it also depends on the design of the hotel, the infrastructure they have, because we think that social distancing is a requirement. We prefer to say it and to adapt it to every hotel, instead of saying you cannot open more than 50% of your capacity, because it will not be able economically for many companies. So it's better to adapt the social distancing to the infrastructure of the hotel. If they require 2 meters distance between sunbed and sunbed, and you have another space at your swimming pool or in your gardens, or if you want to use your tennis court to make it to transform it into a solarium, you will be able to have this space and social distancing, so you can increase your capacity even over 70% or 75%, even increasing, for example, the time you have to have breakfast. Instead from 7 to 10, maybe you can open the buffet service, the breakfast service from 6 in the morning to 11. Maybe with these 2 extra hours, you can split and separate the people a little bit more, and letting the hotels also use the gardens or the terrace to provide more service, more tables, more separated. So what we are trying to improve is social distancing in the common areas in the hotel, so that they're able to get more capacity inside the hotel. But it will be different for each property. There are properties that will have lower space, so they will be limited, and of course they will have to reduce their capacity.
So I understand there's quite a few hotels that are only aiming for 50% for July and August. They're not trying to achieve more. They want to learn and see what happens at 50%. So they won't take bookings beyond 50% for that July and August period.
Yeah, we have received the information for some companies that would like to reduce themselves, but this is a self-imposed condition because they want to test what they are doing. They have to train their people. They want to do it step by step. And July and August, there is not so much demand by the moment. It will go growing gradually. And so they prefer it from a safety way by the mind and having time to adapt their people and to teach them properly.
Thank you. And then there was a question in relation to rental properties. When will they open? When will they open to accept visitors? And then finally, if you can quickly touch on price, what do you expect to see? Will prices go up, go down, etc.?
Well, the rental property will be able to open at the same time from the 1st July on. They will be obligated to have more cleaning services before the arrival and the departure. And here we mentioned that there will be maybe a new way to do tourism, that is work from home, away from home. We mean with this that most of us people that are here attending the conference that have been working from home because they have been obligated by this situation. Probably work from home will increase in the near years, in the following years. And why not, instead of working in Dublin, London, Berlin, or Madrid, you can spend 1 month working from home, but instead of being in Madrid, being here in the Canary Islands, enjoying the afternoon, going to dinner, making some sport, practicing surf. I think it will be very good for the rental properties to rethink in this new model that will be imposed all around the world in the next years. And return prices, sorry?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, now, I mean that referring prices, it always obviously depends on the policy of each hotel. Security measures will mean cost increases for hotels as a result of increases in staff, structural adaptations, such as possible changes on buffets and so on, and setting up the security infrastructure to respect the hygiene protocols. So the hotel pricing policy will also be affected for sure. We're trying to be sure it doesn't grow too much. We're going to give them some help from the government to be adapted and not to have to increase the prices so much.
And then there were a few questions around hotels. What's the practicality of, dining services, etc. So you've listed a few points here. I know there are lots of protocols being introduced, but if you can quickly talk us through some of the key protocols that are going to be implemented at hotels.
Okay. We realized, we checked with some tour operators and some airlines that the buffet, for example, was something really important for the clients, and specifically for the UK and Ireland citizens, that they love the all-inclusive services. So we're working on it very hard to provide a safety buffet. How are going to do it with protection screens? People will not be able to serve themselves and then let the forks and everything there for the next client. No, there will be a separation and there will be a buffet assistance. So people can choose whatever they want. There will be the enormous variety they're used to see in any of our hotels, but it will be served by a buffet assistant, and it will be served individually, or cover it in a single portion in case, for example, of the desserts. This in case of the buffet, which is something important for our clients.
And you mentioned regular cleaning of, all items, like dispensers, salt cellars, etc. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you've already touched on longer opening hours, starting the breakfast earlier to facilitate crowds. Room service, that makes sense. Can you talk about the why not concept that you've introduced?
Yeah, it's something that I explained a few minutes ago to Michael. In our protocols, we had to explain why not, because there are things that are being used in a marketing way, creating a false feeling of security, which is not useful from the sanitary point of view. For example, the use of gloves. It's obvious that everybody's using gloves. They are feeling more safe, but it's not true. A glove avoids that you feel that you have your hands dirty or greasy, and usually if you feel it, you go immediately to clean and to wash it and use some help to clean it. But with the gloves, you don't have that feeling, so you lose it. You feel safe, and maybe you are serving in a table or you are touching different things and you are spreading and contagion everybody. So our sanitary department recommends much more clean your hands, use the hydrohel solution, and cleaning it every time you feel that you have it dirty. A false sense of protection is much more dangerous, so they recommend not to use it at all, for example. So we will have to explain why not. You see it in another destination, and here you don't see it. But I think it's better to be safe than feeling safe and not being it really in a proper way.
So the protocols won't be overbearing. As you said earlier, people will be able to experience a holiday, not feel like they're in a hospital. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Few questions around beaches and walking. Are there any plans to reschedule the walking festivals that were due to take place this summer? And are the walking trails open?
The walking trails will be open. They are already open, except in some of them that we're taking also this month to have everything prepared in a better way. Some of them are in building works to make them better, but that's the only reason why they are closed. The other ones are already open, and people can go walking around all the islands, because all the islands have very nice trails to do around under the natural spaces. But they're also planning some plannings to reschedule the walking festival. The Tenerife one will be delayed. It will not be able to be handled during this summer. And the Gran Canaria one in October will take place finally, I think it's from the 22nd to the 25th of October.
And then beaches, how will it be possible, and will you actually monitor social distancing on beaches?
Well, we have here at the beginning that there were some other destinations had some plan of putting some I don't know how to say it, crystal walls between sunbeds, and we think
perspex walls.
Yeah, but it reduced the feeling that you have in a beach, the breeze, the wind, the smell, and everything. So we don't want that kind of very hard measures. We only want social distancing measures. We mean with 2 meters social distances. We have plenty of beaches, and they're very different one to another. For example, we have very long ones with more than 20 kilometers in Jandía, in Fuerteventura, and there will be no problem to have social distancing. If somebody here has to go to this island, they realize that they will have no problem. In the other hand, we have small beaches, and those small beaches, they will be controlled, their capacity. There are some of them that will allow 500 people, for example, and a reduced number, because the sea, it moves from we have a low and high sea level. Depending on the level, the amount of availability could go from 500 people to 400 or 300 people, but it will be only in those small beaches that must be controlled to avoid crowded situations.
Thank you. Niamh, if you can move on to the next slide for us, please. So the next slide is digital health passport. So this is something we've put out a press release, I think 2 weeks ago now, so I think most people are aware of it. But can you give us an update? Can you give us details on that first safe flight and how the digital health passport will work?
Well, the idea of the safe flight requires a validation flight. To validate something, first you must verify that the state is in. That's the reason why we need to test the people before coming here. And that's the preliminary test. It can be set up from 24 hours to 72 hours in advance, and then you can board. That document or that certificate could be done in a paper, but you know that the papers can be used or changed or moved. So we think that there are really technological tools that could add an added value. For example, the blockchain technology, and there is also that digital health passport. That is much more than something for the COVID-19. It's a tool that you can have in your handy, and you can input all the clinical information, your personal and healthy information. If you have any previous disease, if you have any problem with your heart, and you have all the information inside. Whenever you travel abroad or you come to the Canary Islands, our hospital will be able to check that information if you allow it, because you need to allow who is able to receive that information from you. You are the only owner and the only one to control it, but the hospital will be able to treat you in a better way with less needs of translations and with information about your last analytics or your last disease, or if you have a chronic issue. So I think it's an advance for the whole world, and I think it has been very well adapted by the World Tourism Organization. They're promoting it because it will create a safer way of the new tourism after the pandemic.